It seems like around this time in every presidential term, particularly when we have two-term presidents, the focus begins to shift onto the legacy, right? What they're going to be remembered for, what are going to be their signature accomplishments or failures, how the history books are going to write about each president and what their term was like and the impact that they had. I read an article this summer from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government that was saying that it's very hard for any president to know what their real legacy is going to be when they leave office because things are so politicized that it takes a while to sort it all out and to figure out what the impact has actually been. Well, the reality is that we all are leaving a legacy, whether we like it or not. The things that we do, the decisions we make, the conversations that we have, the projects that we take on, the emails we send, the tweets we post, everything becomes part of a body of work that determines how things are going to end for us and how we're going to be remembered after we are gone. The book of Acts is, if nothing else, it is mainly about the conversion and then the missionary journeys of the Apostle Paul, right? And throughout the whole book of Acts, we see story after story of this life and this ministry that Paul is carrying out. But very much like these presidents, we get to the end of the book of Acts, we get sort of to the second term of Paul's ministry, and we see that even his mind and his heart start to turn towards his legacy. And so in chapter 20 of the book of Acts, we see this amazing story where Paul is on a sailboat and he's starting to head back to Jerusalem. And he pretty much is assured that when he arrives in Jerusalem, he's probably going to be arrested. He'll petition to see if he can be sent on to do his imprisonment in Rome, but he's not really expecting to ever get out again. And so as he's sailing towards Jerusalem, he makes these stops along the way to say goodbye to some key people in his life. And it says that he sails on past the town of Ephesus, one of the major churches that he had spent 2 years with, a group of people that he had shared really important times with and built some really important things with. But he stops just beyond Ephesus. He stops in the port of Miletus, and he calls the Ephesian elders to come down to the dock to meet him and say goodbye. And it really is one of the more touching moments in the book of Acts, really in all of Scriptures. I want to read to you from Acts 20, starting in verse 17. From Miletus, he sent a message to Ephesus, asking the elders of the church to meet him. And when they came, he said to them, "You yourselves know how I lived among you the entire time, from the first day that I set foot in Asia, serving the Lord with all humility and with tears, enduring the trials that came to me through the plots of the Jews. I did not shrink from doing anything helpful, proclaiming the message to you and teaching you publicly and from house to house. As I testified to both Jews and Greeks about repentance toward God and faith toward our Lord Jesus. And now, as a captive to the Spirit, I am on my way to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there, except that the Holy Spirit testifies to me in every city that imprisonment and persecutions are waiting for me. But I do not count my life of any value to myself, if only I may finish my course and the ministry that I received from the Lord Jesus, to testify to the good news of God's grace." It really is just a beautiful passage. I mean, can you see the scene here? Can you imagine these elders down there on the docks? They're taking turns embracing him and kissing him and saying goodbye because they also know that the chances are that they're never going to see him again. And as they do, he says, I am at peace with this. I am okay. I'm ready for whatever comes. My only desire is that I finish well, that I do this right, that this thing that I've been doing all along, from the very first day I set foot in Asia with you all, that I would be able to continue that on, that I would be able to not just proclaim, not just preach the gospel of Christ, but actually live it out. To actually show to each of you, to all of those around me, the same kind of grace that Jesus Christ has shown to me. It really is just a beautiful, beautiful passage, a beautiful story. But I think it also teaches us some really important things about what a legacy is. What a legacy is, what's important about a legacy, how we go about creating and building a legacy, and when we start doing that. You know, it's interesting. I was reading a lot of business magazines over the summer as I was trying to get ready for this series, and there really has been a bit of a break in recent years. There's a trend in all of these business magazines to talk about a legacy, not so much anymore in terms of accomplishments and achievements, or in terms of building hospitals or libraries or big buildings in our names. Sorry, Donald. But really that there's more and more of a tendency to talk about legacy in terms of relationships, in terms of the values that we hold and how we pass those on to the people in our lives, the people who are surrounding us, the people who we care about the most and care about us the most. That a real legacy is not so much about what we do and what we achieve, but much more about who we become. And the way that who we become creates seeds that are planted and become fruit in other people's lives. Buzz McCoy often talks about us fructifying ourselves inside of other people, and that is the trend that they're talking about when it comes to legacy. It reminds me of a passage by one of my favorite authors, Henry Nouwen, a famous Catholic priest who's written a lot of wonderful, wonderful things. But in this one book, Our Greatest Gift, A Meditation on Dying and Caring, he talks about his mother's death and the impact that it's had on him. And he says this, he says, in this way, dying becomes the way to everlasting fruitfulness. Here is the most hope-giving aspect about our death. Our death may be the end of our success. It may be the end of our productivity or our fame or our importance among people, but it is not an end to our fruitfulness. In fact, just the opposite is true. The fruitfulness of our lives shows itself in its fullness only after we have died. We ourselves seldom see or experience our own fruitfulness. Often we remain preoccupied with all of our accomplishments, and we have no eye for the fruitfulness of what we live. But the beauty of life is that it bears fruit long after life itself has come to an end. Jesus said it himself. In all truth, I tell you, unless a wheat grain falls into the earth and dies, it remains only a single grain. And yet if it dies, it yields a rich harvest. John 12:24. This is the mystery of Jesus' death and of the deaths of all of those who have lived in his Spirit. Their lives yield fruit far beyond the limits of their short and often localized existence. Years after my own mother's death, she continues to bear fruit in my life. I am deeply aware that many of my major decisions since her death have been guided by the Spirit of Jesus, which she continues to send me. Now, I don't know if the Apostle Paul had been reading Henry Nouwen or Forbes magazine, but clearly, by the end of his life, he had gotten to this place where he realized it was not about his accomplishments. It was not about his achievements. It was about who he was becoming, right? And if anyone had a great stack of achievements that he could have bragged about, it would have been the Apostle Paul, right? I mean, probably a good case could be made that he was the second most influential human being who's ever lived on the face of this planet. right? And he used to like to brag a little bit about his achievements. Do you remember that passage from the second chapter of Philippians where he says, oh, if you all have something to brag about, I have even more. Born a Jew, circumcised on the 8th day, in the tribe of Benjamin, a Pharisee among Pharisees. I mean, he could have added to that a whole list of other things. I mean, wouldn't you want to have his resume? Oh, yeah, started the largest, most influential movement that's ever hit the face of this planet. Oh, yeah, wrote more than half of the books of the New Testament. But no. No, what he cares about is that he would be able to show those around him the grace that Jesus Christ has shown to him. That's the legacy he wants to leave. That is what he wants written inside of his obituary. That is the impact that he wants to make. But it's not just about the content, because I think we also learn something really important in this story about the timing of our legacy. Remember, he says, just in the way that I have, from the very first day that I set foot in Asia, the way I've been living this life, the way I've been acting out this faith, I just pray my one desire is that I might continue to do that and finish well. You know, it's another thing that I read as I was reading through these business journals. A lot of those who are talking about legacy are talking more and more that it's not something that you should just be concerned about later on in life as you're getting ready to head towards the final chapters. But your legacy is something that's determined by every decision you make from those earliest days, and that people begin thinking about, or should begin thinking about, their legacy from the moment they start realizing what's really important to them. What's real in this world and what's not. What kind of mission, what kind of impact they want to have in this world. And those things should be happening from the earliest days. If you are a young adult in this sanctuary and you're thinking, okay, these next 4 weeks I can check out because this isn't about me. This whole legacy thing, that's for those who are in the twilight years and at the end of their life. Nothing could be further from the truth. You know, they talk about these deathbed conversions, but they're actually very rare. The startling truth is that most of us die the exact same way that we lived. And the reality is that as time goes on, we just usually become more and more like ourselves, don't we? I hear the smirks and the chuckles. The reality is that from those earliest days, we are making most of the important decisions in our life. As young adults, we are meeting more forks in the road than at any other time in our lives. These are the most important years, and then those forks lead to other forks. Those of you who are young, the decisions which you're about to make today are usually based on the decisions that you've already made. It's one of the great illusions of being young that we can always just start over. And in one sense we can, because we can always be forgiven for our mistakes. It's one of the amazing things about our faith, about this new covenant under Jesus Christ, isn't it? That whatever we've done, wherever we've been, we can always ask for forgiveness. We can get a fresh start. We can have a new beginning. And yet the reality is that the doctrine of Christian redemption does not mean we completely start from scratch. Because the truth is that we always bring our old selves into the new commitments, into the new ways of life. It's a part of us. All of our decisions, good and bad, they shape us and mold us into who we are and who it is that we are becoming. All of those great people who've had a huge impact in this world, they always had key, important decisions that they needed to make in their young adult years. We see it over and over and over again. The reality is we can always be given a fresh start. We can always find forgiveness, but all along the way, we are making those major decisions. And as we get older, we realize that those important forks in the road, they're not always the things we think they would have been. It's not always about our careers and our education and our relationships. Usually there are things much more fundamental, like who are we and what's going to be important to us and what kind of values and morals are we going to hold and what are we going to believe in terms of God and what's our mission in life going to be and what kind of person do we want to become. Those are the foundational questions that we decide early on. And those are the things that begin to mold the impact that we have on the people around us, that begin to define and shape our legacy. The question isn't whether we are leaving a legacy. The question is what the substance and the character of that legacy is that we are leaving. Others of you might be sort of halfway through your life, and you've kind of gotten past that point where you have the illusion that you're going to start all over again. For many years, it really wasn't too long ago that I finally sort of shifted on this. For many years, I always had these dreams in my mind that, oh yeah, maybe one day I'll go and be a politician, or I'll go back to medical school and I'll become a doctor, or I'll take my family and move to be a missionary in Africa or Croatia. And yet what I've probably realized just in the last number of years is that the life that I have is the life that I've been building all along. Right? And so Paul says, I just want to finish well. I want to continue to become the person that God has called me to be. I want to continue to show this grace in people's lives around me. Over the next 4 weeks, we are going to be kicking off and going through the 2015 stewardship campaign. And as we lead up to Recommitment Sunday on November 1st, we're going to be talking about what it means, what it looks like to build and to leave a legacy, a real legacy, not the kind that's about achievements and accomplishments and edifices and money. And I'm not saying that we don't need money. We need to keep the electricity on in this church. We absolutely wouldn't refuse the Dick Hulquist Memorial CE building roof. But the reality is that our legacy is so much deeper than that. It's about the fruit that we're planting in people's lives around us. It's about the person we're becoming and the things that we're leaving behind that are going to really last. If it really is true that our end will be defined by the decisions that we make along the way, then what decisions am I making? What patterns of life am I setting and precedences am I setting? And what is the taste and the substance, the residue, the fragrance of the legacy that I'm leaving behind? Throughout this next 4 weeks, we're going to do a little exercise with you. A number of years ago, and I was down in South Africa, I was away on a spiritual retreat at a monastery, and they asked us on the Saturday morning to take some time completely by ourselves in silence, quiet, alone. We could go into the sanctuary or out into the garden or the library, but they wanted us to write our own obituary. And that sounds a little morbid, but the reality is, as I did it, it was one of the more powerful things I've ever done in my life. And in fact, that moment, that weekend continues to resonate in the decisions I make and the way I live my life today. It wasn't just sort of what we thought our obituary was going to read like. They actually wanted us to sort of write down our dream, our ideal obituary. If we could do all the things we would love to do and see all the things we would love to see and become the people we wanted to become, what would be said about us after we died? And I know, again, it sounds morbid, but there is something about living with the end in mind that completely transforms the way that we live our lives today. And so, over the next 4 weeks, we are going to start taking notes towards writing our dream ideal obituary. And on Recommitment Sunday, we're going to give you an opportunity to either Stay a little bit after the service. We'll provide childcare. We'll open up some rooms. We'll give you a place where you can go and be quiet and spend an hour just writing this thing out. Or else we'll ask you to do it as homework. But in the meantime, over these next 4 weeks, we want you to start brainstorming. We want you to start taking notes. And so inside your bulletin, next to Ken's "Why Do I Give to BPC" insert, is this one, called Writing My Own Obituary #1. And if you have either a pen or a pencil or someone next to you will let you borrow one, or there should be some in the pew pockets, we would like you to spend about 3 minutes at least beginning to brainstorm an aspect of what might be included in your obituary. Today we're trying to do the real basic, the more surface level things. So we're going to ask you to write down sort of what are your dreams and hopes and goals for your career and what you're going to do and what you're going to see and experience, kind of the bucket list of the things that you'd like to accomplish and become in your life. And we want you to spend some time writing some notes and brainstorming that a little bit. Next week, we're going to talk about our relationships. What are the things we hope to see happen with our friends and our family and those in our community and our church? The week after that, we'll talk about our service to the community and the world. And what do we hope to give back? If we just ideally, and there was no restraints, no money or time issues or anything like that, what are the ways that we would love to serve our community or serve the world? And then finally, on the last week, we'll talk about our faith and our relationship with God. And what are some of the things we'd like to see happen in our spiritual lives? And then on week 4, we'll take those 4 sheets. So I'd like to ask you to keep them as we go along, but to take those 4 sheets and then use those to write this ideal obituary of yours, whether you do it here at church or you take it home and do it. So with that, take out the sheet of paper, grab a pencil or pen, and let's, if you don't want to write something down or you're not able to, then just pray and think about it. But let's spend some time thinking about what are some of the things we'd like to do, experience, see, accomplish in our lives before we die. Let's take a few moments. I hope that wasn't enough time. But I hope it'll whet your appetite to take it home and continue on to brainstorm some of these things. And we'll do more of these brainstorms through the week, and then we'll bring them back on Recommitment Sunday and then see where we go from there. Thanks. Amen.